We're live.
We're live. So here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dystopia Unmasked with Alexander Carberry and myself, Meticulous Prime. The questions abound this time, as always. And I'm lucky enough, privileged enough to have you to quiz and to explore from, I like that word a lot, heterodox point of view, the things that concern us all and impinge upon us all. Today, a subject that you brought to my attention right after it happened will be the opening subject today, which is there's been an attack on the capital airport of Niger, not Nigeria, Niger. Niamey is the capital of Niger, and in Niger, there was an attack on the airport in Niamey. Maybe some of you have picked up on it, but thanks to you, my attention was drawn to it right when, in fact, the airwaves and the social media platforms that we use were flooded with the unspeakable realities of the peak of Western elitism. The financial elite, political elite, embroiled in the most absurd and abject Marquis de Sade type ongoing for decades experience. So that's where my attention had been dragged to, and you brought it back to Africa. And I think we should start there while we try to digest the onslaught of impossibilities that we've been faced with the release of the Department of Justice from the US. Niamey, it is then, there was an attack. And that particular attack you brought my attention to has been assigned to ISIS. So how are we to take this? Is it, and remember that we've spoken about this in previous sessions, that we've talked about the positionality of these escalations. They surround and now are within the Sahel Alliance, which is currently dedicated, absolutely dedicated to decoupling from old ties to France, old ties to chains of exchange, and to old chains of uh, um, terms of trade. They're trying to break free from the terms of trade that they signed away their futures into in the 1960s and 70s. And that is what is the actual story of the Sahel Union. And now suddenly Islamic extremism, Islamic fundamentalism, Islamic reactionary factions are being accused of being those that bring instability to that region, when in the past Burkina Faso was pointing out that the very sources of funding, financing, and logistical support of some of these operations were the very capitals, the very metropoles, namely France, that they were trying to break away from. So Islamic fanaticism and fundamentalism supported by
Well, the reality is that if you remember in Beyond the Post Colony,
yes,
when that it was the Kaiserreich or the early the first German monarchic state that that promoted the whole idea of Islamic jihad
yes,
to destabilize the French and British colonial power. Um, and and that kind of movement has remained an imperial tool ever since.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I say, because the it is precisely what the Americans. Brzezinski is there on a video which is on YouTube, um, and they used it to defeat the Russians. And then after that, they were using it in across the Arab and Muslim regions to do assassinations and so on. And at some point, the genie both got out of the bottle and remained in it.
Yes.
So whenever you see um, attacks by, and I'm going to call it Muslim terrorists because um, there's nothing Islamic about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whenever you see that, look and start to follow the money.
That's it.
Right.
Always follow
Once you
them.
start to follow the money, you'll end up in an interesting place. Um,
Absolutely.
Sorry, I interrupted you. My
No, no,
apologies.
no. I was just saying absolutely, absolutely. Always follow the money. That's all I was saying. I was just confirming what you were saying.
Okay, but a few weeks ago, I we did a live which mysteriously disappeared. Right.
Exactly. Hmm.
Substack has lost it. They won't reply to me about any questions about it. And in that video, we were talking about why the attack on the Americans attacked Sokoto, and I was saying that it's a warning. And I took the map and I was showing people how close Sokoto is to Niamey,
Exactly.
right? And but not and from Niamey is the is this is the node from which you can enter Mali and you can enter Burkina Faso,
Let me try
right?
and make it up again because
And,
there must be a way.
through which there are major roads which are necessary for moving armies. So I made that call, and we demonstrated. I explained it, and I explained how that changed um my previous assumptions, which was that they would have to come either up through Cameroon and across through the back, or that they would come across down through Algeria or Libya.
Mm-hmm.
So that has changed. Also, from and interestingly, what has happened is that Togo. Excellent. Yes, please. If you get in there, I'll be quiet for a little
Let me
while you
see.
head in. It's going to be just it's up just yeah, exactly.
It's a bit further
Once you
up.
no, you got it. Just go to the move to your left, I think.
Let me see. Where is it? So here we are.
Yeah,
Niger,
down there.
Niamey. That's Niamey.
Exactly, Niamey and Sokoto. Mm-hmm.
It's a
Good.
stone's throw.
Yes.
It's just a
And
stone's throw.
there are the roads, the major roads to Ouagadougou. Yeah.
Ouagadougou's right here. It's the
Mm-hmm.
capital of Burkina Faso.
Mm-hmm. And
And
I think if you show people where Togo is, please.
Togo's right here.
Good.
Right here.
So what has emerged is that Togo um has emerged as a really a port economy, and it's a port economy that has a much faster turnover than Port Lagos. Port Lagos is is
Right
labored with
here.
inefficiencies, and so what Togo has done is built a port, and so the goods coming out of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger are coming out through Togo. Okay, so that means they have to come through Burkina Faso. Huh?
So you see there's a border between Togo and Burkina Faso in the north here of Togo.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that.
Yes, and then if you're getting from from Mali, you go into Niger, you could see how you link up, right? So they have to The roadways, I don't know how those have changed because I know they've been very rapidly building roads.
I'll try and
And
see whether I find a good map for that.
yeah. So anyway, so what has happened is that last year, Niger refused to sell about I think it's about 1,000 tons of yellow cake to the French. Okay.
It's not a laughing matter, but bad luck, France.
Yeah.
Bad luck.
Not at the prices they wanted. They
Hmm.
refused. So
That's it.
um and um and they secured a this they resold. So the French took them to to court. You have to remember that once France entered the EU, all of the benefits of its supply chains into its pre-colonial or its post-colonial territories
Hmm.
accrued to the EU.
Hmm.
So last week the EU was negotiating in Niger. So they need to get that yellow cake, but the yellow cake has been sold to the Russians, and it's sat there in danger, and it's sat there. They have not been able to move it,
Hmm.
and what has happened? Apparently, it looks like the Russians had sent a ship to collect it and two planes to ferry the goods,
Hmm.
and this attack was being planned, and the authorities intercepted the communication, followed it, and set an ambush or trap for them.
Hmm.
So they walked into a trap, and they've taken live prisoners. So it's been quite silent. So now we're going to hear we're very likely to hear what the business is.
What I picked up is that the government of Niger, the government has accused, among others, a coalition of states, including Cote d'Ivoire, of having participated in the planning and execution of this attack. As a list of countries, including regional uh, giant Cote d'Ivoire, which is quite telling.
Yeah,
Which is quite
but
telling.
Cote d'Ivoire don't have yellow cake.
It doesn't have yellow cake, but Cote
Or
d'Ivoire.
it doesn't have it doesn't have a nuclear industry. So
But this is, by the way, a good point because we're talking about neo-colonialism, and if we were to leave the word away, because some terminology, in academia, some terminology frightens people away. Not because there's anything wrong with the term, but because the indoctrination contains stigmatizing certain paradigms. And the word neocolonialism always has a weird touch to it, I realize, for many people, just like the word class. When you try to explain to freshmen at university that every society is a class society, especially in countries like Germany, people really have shocks on their faces because they're trying to explain that no, there's a middle class society. We are a middle class society um, where it's not about class discrimination anymore. And it's the same with neocolonialism. Do you have a working definition of neocolonialism?
I don't use the term. I talk about okay. So here's my
I use
problem.
the term structural imperialism
Yeah,
because it's
but
structural.
let
Mm,
me just be clear about what I mean.
mm,
Um, the 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 British and the French
mm,
and then the Germans who were fighting them to try and get a piece of the pie
Yes.
were organizing the globe
Yes.
into supply chains that could ensure that industry remained at their center and that they could control value, and that the periphery was unable to assert its even to develop the capacity to unseat this order.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, even to imagine the order, which is why it took elites from those places like us
Mm-hmm.
and brought us into the center to educate us.
Exactly.
Okay, because we must not be able to imagine beyond it, because they made the global,
Yes.
they made the international, right?
Yes.
That is uniquely theirs.
Yes.
And so um the
Remember
it in
Friedman.
it
Just a footnote. The Friedman guy, the the geopolitical analyst Friedman,
hmm
who wrote something to the effect of Europe invented humanity in that sense.
hmm
So that
hmm
invention must be encrusted in people's minds
yes. And
repeatedly.
so um and you brought up Hobson the other day.
Yes.
Yeah. So this type of order created the colony as the node which organizes extraction.
Yes.
So when you give a colony independence, it is still a node that organizes extraction. This is not a political node.
An
Okay.
extractive point.
Yeah. It is a politics centered around extraction. And so you're expected to build a polity out of that.
Yes.
Um,
I mean,
I this is a Sisyphean
struggle.
yeah, you try to roll the boulder up the hill and it just rolls back down, right?
And
Because
mm,
because the unit was created with a telos and you're not getting away from that telos. You have to, right? But if I said that, they put me in prison because it has to work by because it in order for it to work, it it inherited the French technology developed for the management of that node,
exactly.
which is which is coin is countering
Counterintelligence.
counterinsurgency. All right,
Counterinsurgency,
counterintelligence
yeah.
and counter, yeah. So this is the so that if you speak out against the node, then you invoke counter insurgency. So the point here is that actually it is almost a hermetically sealed system,
Yes.
right? So I don't
Yes.
talk about neo-colonialism, but not because I don't recognize it,
Mm.
but I'm saying we're in a category error here. Okay, it's actually the unit, and the unit was placed there in order to ensure that they could efface any kind of pre-existing political orders and especially um, law
Mm.
and property management,
Mm-hmm.
right? So so this container, so the independent nation is created for that. So you look at South Africa, right?
Yes.
South Africa has independence but cannot deal with the land appropriation matter. That is off the table. Can't talk about it, can't deal with it. Okay? And it is independent, but in a legal system that cannot engage with the pre-existing legality that was on the ground when the Europeans arrived, right? Simply not constitutional in that way, too, right? So because in that because if you engage with that, you have to ask the question of what was the legal basis of the land purchases in a place in which you cannot purchase land in that way,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Sorry. Aubrey Somana. Hi, Assalam. Yeah, indeed, the British, the French, and others made the international and they created colonialism. Inherent in colonialism is coloniality. Now, what we are dealing with here is coloniality of liberation. That is, liberation is designed within the architecture of colonialism, and it is merely a transition from one phase of coloniality into another. That's exactly what I'm saying. Thank you very much. Much better than I did.
With a
Right?
little less hands on, but it's still ongoing.
Yes. So, so that's
The
what we
iron
face.
fist is in a velvet glove.
Yeah, and and even the tools that you can imagine to manage the container, right? They're not of your imagination.
They are not of your imagination. It is the master's signifier,
Yes.
still at work. And,
Yes.
you know, I just wanted to point out that one of the consequences of that is, or one indicator of what is going on is when I was doing some background research just to be up to date on the Niamey attacks, um, is this very, very brief Reuters uh, notification about it. I'll read it to you. It says, Niger military ruler accuses France, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire of sponsoring the airport attack. I open it, I read on, and it says, Niamey, January 29th, Reuters. Niger's military ruler Abdurrahman Tiani on Thursday blamed French, Benin, and Ivory Coast presidents for sponsoring the attack on Niamey International Airport, an accusation he made without offering any evidence. So they've dismissed the guy right away. You are a press entity, and you are usually taught. There was a time I wanted to be a journalist, and I took the principles taught to me for journalism as sacrosanct. There is no higher source. There is no higher source of legitimacy than an elected president or than any kind of, okay, so they're going to say he's a military dictator. Therefore, it doesn't matter what he says, it cannot be in any way paid heed
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
So that's the theology of the pseudo democratic, you know,
Hmm.
value system. Anyhow, gunfire and loud explosions echoed around Niger's international airport shortly before midnight in what two security sources described as a terrorist attack before calm returned to the capital on Thursday morning. Long story short, the people most affected by this attack have told you who they believe to be behind it, and the list is indicative of what has been going on the African continent since the late 1960s,
Hmm.
which is you had France, Benin, and Ivory Coast, African countries, involved in harming efforts at political autonomy of another African country. When Kwame Nkrumah in the 1950s and 60s, up until 67, within a decade, tried to launch the African Union, tried to launch the African Union as an economic cooperative uh, collective project of all African states, pooling in their resources to support one another and uplifting the least. So, using Ghana's cocoa to support Guinea's aluminium industry, or you know any kind of cooperative gains, was thwarted back then already by Cote d'Ivoire, inspired by France. And you had the Casablanca group uh, that was, I'm trying to remember this now, but they split Africa in two groups: the group behind Nkrumah and the group behind Houphouët-Boigny, the then
Mm-hmm.
president of Cote d'Ivoire, who stayed president until late in the 1990s,
Mm-hmm.
and who was a France favorite.
Mm-hmm.
So the point about I'm trying to make is that the consistency of the neo-colonial playbook all the way into 2026, where we see the same nodes being mobilized again to thwart another
Yeah.
effort at regional autonomy,
Okay.
is mind-boggling that we
Well,
don't see it.
well, but I'm really happy you've raised that. Okay, but I wanted. I mean, Chatterex raises something here that makes it really is I have to engage with.
Mm-hmm.
Nations may still have the decorative elements of a state like flag, anthem, national soccer team, but the fundamentals like finance, economic, and political systems are controlled by the imperialists. Okay, so
Voilà.
I want to say something that the development of the bourgeois civilization, so the movement of Europe from an aristocratic base to a bourgeois base, so a middle class base,
Mm-hmm.
right? That saw the redesign of political technology. And part of that redesign of political technology is the capture of the political by by finance, by
Mm-hmm.
offering the political the leverage of finance, so that you you can spend today against the promise of tomorrow.
Mm.
Right? That is what finance unleashed for the political technology of Europe. And so that any any political technology inherit from Europe has at its center the financial, right? The promise, the you know the spend today on the promise of tomorrow, right?
Every time you
And
say the word finance, I hear Epstein, but I'm sorry, that's just.
okay, yeah. So that technology is hardwired into to modern political systems once you inherit them from the Enlightenment period of Europe, because that is part of what happened. And and so and for me, if you, my latest article, I am arguing that the what we call the imperial period is is the direct consequence of the kind of concentration of capital and and the attitudes of financialization, especially applied to labor, and in this case, African slave labor, that transforms the way that economy is imagined. And
Mm-hmm.
so it became, because you're accustomed to basically almost free labor in Africans.
Yes.
You don't want to pay anybody, you don't want to pay anybody a living wage. And so the problem that Hobson identifies is that then you've industrialized and people are working, but you're not paying them enough even to buy what you're producing.
Yes.
So then you have to go abroad and open up new markets, new
Mm-hmm.
frontiers, you, which require people to die to defend your right to exploit them. And a- a- as a result of the fact that you're just not paying people enough,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that has not changed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're now thinking about using AI to reduce the cost of labor, but who's going to buy their things, right? Pay people a living wage. This is a direct. So that when people when people ask me, well, why are you always talking about slavery? Because it is simply the most significant economic and political event
Hmm.
of the last 500 years. And it shapes us in ways that we, it shapes our everyday in continuous ways that our failure to acknowledge means that it always returns as a symptom, right?
Yes. Hmm.
And when I'm talking about it, you notice I don't really talk about it in the terms of racism. Racism is the technology developed to make that reality useful and to get white people to fight against their own interests and black people to be struggling to prove their equality, right? Whilst sacrificing their labor,
And at the same
right?
time, every single time that you try to get out of this competitive straitjacket that you're stuck in, every time you try to get out, a group of your peers, of those that are like you, as in this case, is mobilized to pull you back down into the
Yeah,
system,
because
as it were.
you need to stop with that and see you judge people by their proximity to capital, right? That no, because basically you have to understand this. It is that in that political technology of the Enlightenment period comes the ability to make money out of debt. So you don't have the money, you don't have anything, you issue a debt to someone,
Yes.
all right? So you need to pay me. You just created the money. When you pay me, there's no money. Okay, so in order for the money to exist, there must be debt. This, once you begin to understand how to leverage that, that is that is more addictive than cocaine. Okay, so you have to judge, you have to identify people by their proximity to that technology, because it the interests align, right? You can't be talking about if you talk about it in terms of the symptom of that imperial system. So the symptom of that imperial system is that it requires racism in order to create the differentiation that I call fractal identities in order to function, but it's a symptom. So you have to cut to the bone, right? And the bone and it is proximity to that is why um the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah's peace and blessing be upon him, said he called it this 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 kind of technology is called riba. He
Mm.
said it is 70 times worse than having sexual relations with your mother inside the Kaaba, right?
It
Because
is
of yeah,
beyond the unfathomable.
yes, because of the kinds of and because they had it in pre-Islamic Arabia,
Okay.
right? In fact, one of the uncles of the Prophet Muhammad he was a money lender
Mm.
and he had to give it up,
Okay.
right? So you you have to understand that this is a technology and you have to and you have to understand the technology. Don't get caught. Don't get caught in in the kind of
Mm.
identity manufacture required to hide the act. Right? You really have to drill into the mechanic. That's why I'm so interested in receipts. Right? Follow the receipts.
Wherever they may lead to.
Yes, and you have to be prepared to be surprised and to change your opinion a lot of times.
Displeased even.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a point at which you have your opinion smashed so many times that you really, it doesn't matter. You don't even get
It
displeased
doesn't.
anymore.
No, I'm exactly at that
Right.
point at this point
Yeah.
in 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 my research career or history. There's no. This is another aspect. Maybe we can find a moment to discuss this. If you don't find it relevant at this point, don't pick it up. But it is a question that has been keeping me up,
Hmm.
and that is, you know, all of this is extremely important because this is reading reality in the necropolitical age. Um, and you believe when you're academically trained that you have the tools. And the most telling indicator of a well-trained mind in academia, when presented with any statement, claim, truth claim of any nature, is within 30 seconds or 15 seconds, you have to ask, could you provide me with the source of this? And then the quality of what you've just picked up plummets, diminishes with the speed at which the person who made that claim can provide you with the source. Then comes the second verification automatism. Okay, what source did he just or she just express? Is that a source that is valid, or is that a suspicious source? So you have these automatic reflexes as a professional. So what's the source? Ah, that's the source. Okay, that's a valid source. It's governmental. It's established. The address is known. It's in one of Europe's capitals. It's maybe in, you know, something like that. You doing it subconsciously. And here's my point now. I don't know how other political scientists are doing today. I don't know if they're well. Check on your political science friends, because nothing, nothing that is sourced or provable could have prepared anyone for any of the aspects that have been released by the Department of Justice. And I'm not interested in discussing that. I'm interested in a scientific analytical question. What is the point of this empirical, uh, the centrality of empiricism for valid knowledge production? So, the centrality of empiricism for valid knowledge production, when the truth, when it comes out, proves to be entirely unscrutinizable. It was happening for decades, and none of it was accessible to empirical scrutiny. None of it. None of it. So, what does this do with this method of certainty production? This method of uncertainty reduction? What does that do when you find out that the stuff that you automatically use and apply has no bearing whatsoever on some of the most significant actual factual developments currently ongoing on the world, influencing politics at the highest levels?
Well, I want to approach where you're going, but I'm going to do it in the way that you had spoken
Mm,
it, in the order.
mm,
The first one of the first things I learned on my intellectual journey. Okay, I think one of the most, I wouldn't say first, one of the most significant things I learned on my intellectual journey
mm.
is to ask the questions: in what way of seeing does this become thinkable? And are there other ways of seeing in which this is not thinkable? Okay. It
Yes.
allows you to have context on your claims to truth, right? I am basically a post foundationalist thinker. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it allows you to deal with, yeah, so your claims to truth, and it allows you to understand what your sources can and cannot give you in terms of certainty.
Yes.
So that's one. Number two, one of the first things I noticed in university was what they were telling me about good sources and where good sources came from.
Yes.
Right? Anybody who's been through the university system will realize that good sources are basically European sources in major European capitals,
That's it.
right? A Spanish source is not as good as a British source,
There you go.
right? And an Italian source is
Yeah.
definitely not as good as an American one, right? Americans have to see that British sources are better than theirs, but they have more money and they do more cutting edge research. Thing, yeah. French sources, yeah, as good as British ones. German sources, as good as, but they have to publish it in English first.
They have to publish it in English.
Yeah.
Yes.
Scandinavian sources, as good as, but they have to publish it in English.
No English,
No.
no presence.
Okay, so when you go to different countries and you hang about the universities, you begin to have exposure to the rigor of their intellectual training.
Yes.
And if you go to Italy or Spain, you will find that their intellectual training is more rigorous than in the English speaking world. If you go to some place like Iran, that's one of the most rigorous. Okay. You
I
engage with Turkish thinkers.
was just about to say.
Okay.
I was on a plane once, and the man next to me was from the Balkans, and right, and we got into a conversation for 5 hours, and within the first 25 minutes, I knew I'm in over my, this guy's historical depth was something else. I was just stuck in my Occidental kind of
Yeah.
Western stuff. He had that, and he had what the Balkans had, and he
Yeah.
had what the
Was he
Russians had.
Serbian?
He had the Turkish
Was he
stuff.
Serbian?
Oh,
Was he
yes,
Serbian? Oh
yes.
shit! No, 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 no.
He had all of it. He had the
Yeah,
American, he had all of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it was, I didn't tell him, I didn't tell him that that he was all over. Uh, but that told me, okay, the school systems, the academic systems are very different. And you know what the funny thing was? As we sat there, I'll just say it as it is. The arrogance of the Western self-importance, that I carry because I'm a Western academic, met with the humility of an academic who knows full well that he's not a Western academic in the classical sense, but is an academic in his own right. And right from the 15th or 20th minute, this guy was having me at 70, 80% of my capabilities, right from the beginning of the conversation. And I had to really dig deep to remember associative, links to what he was referring to. And I realized there's something strange going on among Westerners. They really believe they know it all when just outside of their borders, right over there, people have a much broader, much deeper, much more encompassing macro historical understanding of reality.
Serbia, Czechoslovakian intellectuals,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, then you move to the Russian intellectuals, especially around St. Petersburg,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
I mean, these guys, but what is always interesting about it is they bring receipts
Oh, I have to
and they
add one
know
more
them.
thing. I have to add
Hmm.
one more thing. The man was an engineer. He wasn't a
Yeah, but
social
it doesn't
scientist.
matter.
No,
No,
but
but it
that's the
doesn't
point.
matter.
No,
Yeah,
but
it doesn't matter.
that's exactly my point, because find me an engineer in the West who has the depth of history, the depth of sociology that an engineer from the Balkans has.
Yeah.
It's just
No,
it's
okay, so basically what had happened is that they spend longer in university
Mhm,
than we do, right? Or they used to spend longer in university than we do,
mhm,
and they could check in on different classes,
mhm.
right? So whereas a degree for us takes 3 to 4 years, their first degree was taken 5, right? And they expected you to be able to check in. You could check into other classes. You just have to ask permission.
That's
So
it.
they end up you end up with a much wider base, right? And a hunger for knowledge. And that is just part of it. So you also find it in Spain. You find it in it. You find that kind of attitude in Italy,
Mm,
right? Greece, and then because when you cross over into Africa now, you're
mm,
dealing with usually copies of the French or the British system,
yes,
right?
yes.
And then you come up against the academics that maybe studied in places like Russia and so on,
But I
or
don't
or
want to
or, or
distract you.
Yugoslavia.
Yes.
No, no, no. This is absolutely it.
Yeah.
Oh, Yugoslavia, etc. And you sit down to talk to them, and you're shocked, but they're not getting the same jobs as the other guys who came from Harvard, right? And that's my point. So my point is that in the intellectual pantheon,
Mm,
I realized that this here did not match reality. This was some kind of, I called it theology. It was a and I, it's and I'm not anti theology, but I'm saying that when you claim empiricism, but you're using the rules of theology, right? Move, right?
And it's really
So,
it's really that it's really that. I was privileged enough to work in a research unit with several people. There was a Portuguese, an Italian, what else did we have? A Brazilian,
hmm,
Portugal, Brazil, Italy. Then there was myself. We had
Cuba.
some Nordic people, pardon me?
Anybody from Cuba?
No, no, not in my group. Not in my group. Never met a
Hmm.
Cuban researcher in my there. But there were people from Cambodia. So what happened was that I realized very quickly that some of the concepts that I was bringing in from French academia, for example, weren't being reflected by German academia, and that the Italian intellectual, for example, was a few steps further in the critique of. They were talking about de-development in Italy when in Germany people were still talking about critiques of modernism. So, right, is that the Italians were further, and what I realized is that there was a different, there was a lack of combination, there was a lack of integration, and somehow, of course, if everybody had published in English, it would have helped. But
Yeah, but
since
no, the problem is that if everybody publishes in English, then who's going to peer review your stuff?
Mm,
Then it limits what you can talk about.
excuse me,
Okay.
I don't want to do this, but I have to do it. Another footnote. This peer review system at the heart of modern inquiry. I
Uh,
don't
uh,
want to
uh,
go there.
uh,
Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father is the person who set up the infrastructure of academic journals that
mhm.
are the backbone of all of these quotation systems to justify the quality or to you know
Yes.
to it was
Yes.
Ghislaine Maxwell's father who set up the the academic journal system that the West uses today. So when you go on your university website or wherever you log into these academic journals, JSTOR, all of that,
Hmm.
there seems to be a legacy of Epstein's girlfriend's father's work.
And
Well,
Epstein's girlfriend's father was also a Mossad asset. Yeah.
I
Sorry, I have to. I have to come back. If you
yeah.
please take it. Yeah.
So this is something I really I'm trying to shield myself from uh, drowning in the filth that has been released recently. But apparently, at high and low levels of the infrastructure of thought production, at high and low levels of the infrastructure of political technology, this 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 institution that was uh, Jeffrey Epstein seems to have played a role that is unimaginably deleterious. The system around him. But anyhow, I think we've been talking today about the ways in which power. This is it. We've been talking about power actually, and we've been talking about the way power is constructed in space and in which ways Africa, for example, remains subjected to an architecture of extractive patterns of power exchange and power differentials on this planet that I think African countries would do better to disconnect from as quickly as possible. And we know that Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali are trying, and we are seeing now, as the president of Niger said, that France again is behind Cote d'Ivoire and Benin in trying to destabilize Niger. And we also know that all of the global governance mechanisms that have existed for the past, let us say, since the end of the Cold War, require instability in an African state, in an African country. All of the global governance mechanisms that we know exist, that are tied to the United Nations framework, require a state to be unstable, to be a threat to world peace, as it is stipulated in the UN Charter. Instability in a state, if it becomes a threat to world peace, requires intervention, military intervention. So, for uh, 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 fanaticism to be accused of attacking um, Niger, Niger, is to create the pretext for the global governance interventionist mechanisms to even be legally deployable. And so that is the framework in which within which I see what has happened in Niger, is that there is destabilization, there is a threat to world peace, and as Alex likes to put it, the threat to world peace that is being talked about here is that if France gets no yellow cake on time, French people will not only have to diversify their sources, which they're doing, but the risk increases of French people spending Christmas in the dark at some point,
In the
because
cold and the dark.
in the cold and the dark. So that is what is then considered a threat to world peace, especially because who determines what is a threat to world peace is who has a seat in the UN Security Council.
No, well, who decides who is a threat to world peace? Who is are the ones who have a piece of that peace?
And so that's an extremely important point. And I mentioned something earlier just in passing, and I've pulled up the two things that are needed for those of you who want to look it up. So we have the Niger president who, uh, the Niger, according to Reuters, military ruler, which is an apt and accurate description of what he is, Abdurrahman Tiani. He's blaming
Hmm.
France, Benin, and Cote d'Ivoire. And I'd like you to keep in mind that in 1960-61, we had a similar situation that rhymes with what is going on today. Two groups were suddenly confronted with one another, the Casablanca group and the Monrovia group. Out of this confrontation, the Organization of African Union was born. But the point was that the Monrovia group was a group inspired by France, pushed by France, and led on the African continent by Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, Houphouët-Boigny at that time. The Monrovia group was a group opposed to that, which had the idea of Pan African self sufficiency. So the countries were supposed to be self sufficient and supportive in a network. And the group around Cote d'Ivoire said, no, the countries have to be nationalist. Strength will come from national, single, um, the word not being self sufficient, but continued cooperation with the former colonies. That was the key point. Preferential continued cooperation with the former colonies.
Make sure you keep your piece of the peace.
That was the position of that particular group. And that was the Monrovia group. And today we have the same dynamics again with Benin and Cote d'Ivoire, thwarting through Niger the effort of the coalition between Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger towards more self reliance, less dependence on uh, logistical ties to the West. It's important that we see those parallels.
Hmm.
And I'm a bit tired of this. I'm really tired of this. It's always the same game plan. It's divide et
Well, well,
impera at a higher
well,
level.
well, I mean, I'm sorry. If you're,
Tired of
do
it.
you play, do you play tennis?
No, but no, not at all.
And
Not at all.
any particular sport you like?
Oh yes, basketball.
Okay, so if you have
Hey,
a,
I'm an imperial baby. I'm as American as they come.
well, well, if you have a strategy that is working for you, why would you change it? And you winning all your games.
Oh,
Why would you change? Why would you change it?
that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, and that's it. Why would they change it? Um, I'm just remembering. there was when I was doing that series. One of them is the Black Phoenix Rising from the Ashes,
Yes.
which I did 2 years ago. I think it was October 2024.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Um, because I end so in that around the time I was doing that, um, I'll go further. The one before that, consumer. Around that period, I did a number of I did some of the articles in which I really explored um, how the French colonial system also in the elites of that system were also funding um, French politicians to win in France. Right. So
Ah. Mm.
uh, the point I'm making here is that the relationship is not a one-way relationship, right? These are relationships of intertwined elites. That is why I talk about proximity to capital, right?
Yes.
And I have a number of articles that really explore that. The first one I do, I do that one is in très
Très
fatigué,
Très fatigué,
right?
yes.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah,
We
so.
actually have to group the articles thematically, you know. I think that's a good afternoon's job.
Mhm.
It has to be done.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, 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 yes. That in très fatigué, I really start on that,
Mm-hmm.
and then the immigration economy and so on. That in
Yes.
those places, I really explore that. So you'll find that. But my point here is that you cannot separate what you're seeing there when they have access to those cheap resources
Yes.
extracted at prices that labor cannot sustain itself, and so the traditional economy must feed those people,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it is disavowed, it is not spoken about.
Yes.
And so yeah, the traditional economy must then
Sorry.
what happens is that directly affects the expectations of wages in Europe,
Yes.
okay? Because when you're getting a resource like yellow cake or uranium, and you've been paying a third of the price for it,
Mm-hmm.
and you come into you don't want to you literally expect you you don't expect to pay much for anything,
Yes.
right? um and if you do, because there's a benefit to be derived, that once that benefit is derived, then you go back to your old habits,
Yes.
right? So you can't that's where I agree with the Marxists, right? In the universality of the proletariat in that sense, because once you enter an economy, an imperial economy like this, that is what you're going to face.
Yes.
Okay, and so you absolutely have to, racism is not in anybody's interest,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is an economic tool. It is a tool of capital, right? It's a tool of capital to separate people against their own interests. And even when you're in the middle classes, right?
Yes.
Even when you're in the middle classes,
Mm-hmm.
you're basically, you are now placed in a position to administrate a system that is against your interest. So you end up with less than you would have had. Okay. And then you're often asking me, well, how people are not doing anything about it. Because the nature of a society is that people want to move themselves up the social ladder.
Mm-hmm.
So their imagination is, oh, I can buy that just like that one, right? I can educate my children just like that one,
Yes.
right? And
And
so
the
that gives
pull,
the society stability.
well, the upwards pull, it gives it stability, or as in the case of Ghana that I know well, it actually increases instability because people are so Huh. People are so driven to succeeding and stabilizing their own household or family or their own stance that people begin under cutting the branches that they stand on very often, cutting their own nose to spite their face. It is another side of the same coin. In an effort to make it, in an effort of social mobility upwards, in a system that has very little social solidarity, in the modern version of it,
Hmm.
you are told by the through Western education that your traditional systems are backwards. So you're made to turn your back on traditional systems of solidarity and support and welfare. And while you advance in this no man's land of no support, where everything is governed by money and legal systems that don't benefit from the trust of the population, what happens is that then you encounter corruption, you encounter untrustworthy people. Yes, please.
So when you detach yourself
Mm.
from the traditional structures of support,
Yes.
where must you go for support?
Money. You have
And
to
where
do
do you
what?
get the money from?
Well, you sell somebody else's property, bequeath it to you for
Okay.
caretaking, for example.
Where do you put the money? Where do you
Well,
put your money?
that that's a good question. In practice, immediately into your new business.
Okay. But where do you store the money that you put into your new business?
I was I'm tempted to say yes, of course he means banks, but that's not what I've observed. The moment
Mhm.
people get a huge batch of money, they immediately, at high speed, run to the project of which they expect to generate more than the money they have acquired
Okay.
through whatever
So
means and
okay.
throw it
Uh,
at that project.
so when does that happen? So let me ask you a question. What is the rate of inflation in in that economy,
Oh,
or the
I would have
history of
to.
inflation?
It's crazy. From the last 20
Okay.
years,
So that
it's
happens.
same.
So that happens when people have a memory of significant inflation,
Mm,
right? Because they realize that their wealth can only hold value
mm-hmm.
in commodities or in a process that earns money.
Yes,
Okay.
that's it.
So that's when that happens. Other than that, it goes to the banks. Okay.
That's it. Mm-hmm.
And if anybody is going to do any major projects, then they must connect with banks.
Yes.
Okay. And is that what you, my point here is that the colonization does not end. If you did you look at have you ever looked at that film 120 days of Sodom by the Italian
Yes, that's a long
filmmaker?
time ago. That's a
Oh
long
God,
time
what's his
ago.
name? What's his name? What's his name?
Something Dini. Dini. Let me Google it.
Give me
Hold
a
on.
second. Of Sodom, right?
Yes.
What's his name, man?
It'll come in a second. It is Sodom by. It is. I have it
Pier
in front of me.
Paolo
Pasolini. Pasolini.
Pasolini.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because what Pasolini was saying, this is why you have to get around, right? Especially in multiple languages.
Mm.
What Pasolini was saying is that the period of capitalist and consumerist development in Italy
Mm-hmm.
was destroying its social fabric, the
Okay.
continuity of its cultural and social fabric,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was very against that. So his films repeatedly approach that from multiple angles. And if you looked at 120 Days of Sodom, you're going to see very clear um, analogs to what you're seeing with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes, that's why I was grinning because that movie is somewhere at the very, it's at the bottom, far away, and
No, it's a disturbing film.
I put it in a black hole. I don't want to remember.
It's a disturbing film. I'm not right, but
It's yeah.
the point I'm making is that what you have to understand. This is why last week when I was talking about what the colonial, because everybody only thinks of the colonial in terms of the colonies and the darker races and all of that.
Mm,
Okay, and I was bringing you back to the fact that when Napoleon was instituting his colonial system, he was basically colonizing Europe and creating the nation states in
yes,
order to continue to in order to place that financialized elite in the center in order to continue the colonization of Europe by
yes,
France,
exactly.
right? Bernadotte became the king of Sweden,
Hmm.
but was it Sweden or Denmark? Can't remember.
Bernadotte rings a whole other bell for me, but
Yeah,
Folke
the
Bernadotte
is general, man, the general of Napoleon is
wasn't not on my radar, but let me see.
yeah, Sweden. I was right. Yes,
Well, let me see.
18. Yeah,
Hold on, let me see. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. No way. But is this Bernadotte in any way related to Folke Bernadotte? I mean, the name kind of the
I
name.
don't know.
I wasn't aware of this, Alex. This is a little gem you've just dropped on me here. This is a little gem here. This is a little gem. Ramifications of history.
Yes, Volker Bernadotte is from the same family.
Look at that. Look at that. Hmm.
Okay,
Yes.
so so I so that uh an independence movement, because we often think it is almost as if these the post-colonial states have to be freed. No, what
Mm.
about Europe? Okay, it's in exactly the same situation. Yeah, with the enthroning of exactly the same bourgeois elite.
Hmm.
Okay.
This
Um.
is
Mhm.
unbelievable. You have just stared at. Oh, hold on. I need a little bit just to focus and concentrate because you've just added one of those things to my mind that has me bubbling now.
Mhm.
Um, ah, can you just repeat again the Bernadotte line of thought you had because it took me straight to Folke, and so that's who they killed. I My goodness, man. So that's
Uh,
who they killed.
okay. All I'm saying is that that Napoleon redesigned Europe as a colonial system.
Yes, he did.
And in order to do that, he utilized the nation state.
Mm.
Okay. And when I was writing that article um, on Syria, I said what they're talking about the ghost in the nation soul. That is what I was referring to. I am saying that the entire political technology of modernity is a form of colonial capture.
Yes, that is absolutely true. But you just shocked me. You have just shocked me. You're telling me that a Frenchman actually became a king of the Swedes.
Yes, but that's not abnormal.
It, but this is absolutely consequential. So you mean to tell me that Swedish nationalists they have to deal in their hearts and in their soul with the fact that one of our kings was
No, that
was
that the surviving line is
A French guy
Yeah.
imposed on us through defeat.
Hmm.
Oh, I'd like to talk to Swedish people about this. I'd like to know how they feel about this.
And the Bernadotte line was also, they also ruled Norway.
It's absolutely fascinating. Fascinating.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So so that's what I'm saying. I'm and when you I was I was when you called me this morning, I was deep into Rosa Luxemburg,
Ah, hmm.
right? Um, because I mean, you know, I she's saying the same thing. I don't agree with I don't agree with many of the premises of the Marxists. I agree with many of them, but I don't agree. You know, I have an interesting relationship with Marxism, right? Um, but you get people like Lenin and Rosa Luxemburg, and they get the point. They really get the point, yeah, in ways that people really don't get it.
It's true. It's absolutely
Um,
true.
mhm,
They're vilified. They're vilified. I mean, the other day, I really read somebody post a comment. Uh, so somebody was praising Rosa Luxemburg's analytical capabilities. And in the
mhm,
comment section, somebody posted, uh, she deserved every little bit of the death she got. I was like,
mhm,
what is this? What is this? Where does the hate come? And then I checked and I tried to see who that user was, and it was a Polish guy. It was a Polish guy, and I was wondering, is there any connection to why it was a guy from the Polish aristocracy, at least his name indicates as much. I was thinking
mhm.
to myself, is there any reason why Polish aristocracy would have a problem with Rosa Luxemburg?
Um,
Quite plausibly, because it's anti-communist to the core, because it's anti-Soviet, and Rosa Luxemburg is just too adjacent to that ideology for
mhm.
comfort. So her assassination must be applauded and lauded and celebrated.
Yeah. So I think for me, one of the important things is to develop this non-ideological capacity to understand the genealogy of your situation,
Absolutely.
right? And I think it's really important that we we not only acquire but develop that capacity to think under the kind of pressures, because we also for because what happens with an intellectual with an ideological intellectual method is that it often fails to what I was talking about, going back to the beginning when I was saying to you that you really have to look at how the ideas that you have become thinkable. The problem with ideology often is that doing that feels like betrayal. Okay. Because often what happens is that people want revolutionary certainty. Okay. And I am very suspicious of that because what I know is that every position that we take, it has its consequences. Some of them are beneficial and some of them will be problematic. You have to have your eyes open, um, because you're going to have to deal with them. But often, what happens with ideology is you foreclose that.
Yes.
Okay, so you force people into to taking actions which harm them, but which they cannot admit harm them.
Yes.
Okay, and then if it then that necessitates the Stalin or Mao, right? As much as it necessitates the McCarthy. Okay, I don't
That's correct.
separate them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do not
Yes.
separate them, and
Yes.
yeah, and then you get and then you get the period of late American capitalism in the 1970s when the New Deal collapses, etc.
Uh-huh.
And they have to decouple the dollar from gold, and the economy goes into and the economy and political system goes into almost a free fall because the
Yes.
American political system doesn't change very much.
And
That
interestingly,
that's very
interestingly,
that's theological. It doesn't really
will,
change.
will it survive this particular administration?
I can't answer that question.
It
Um,
keeps me
but
up. It keeps me up.
yeah,
If it
yeah. So
survives, you know where I've
mm,
landed? I've landed on if it survives, that is that. I mean, that would be testimony to incredible his the
the American political system has survived something like this before.
and
Okay.
exactly. So that will be fascinating.
Yeah, but the point about it is that it is a very because of its okay. You got to step back. You have to understand that the American university system they all started as seminaries for the sons of their elite. Okay, so it was about them being able to read the Bible.
I just wanted to
Then,
say, somebody said once the only book read in the U.S. to the middle of the 19th century was the Bible. Somebody
sorry.
said that one. Somebody once said the only book that was ever read in the U.S.
Hmm.
was the Bible until the middle of the 19th century.
I, I- um, I wouldn't. I
It's
would
a bit,
disagree with that, but it certainly was the most read book.
it's a bit tongue in cheek, but you know.
Yeah, it's very tongue in cheek. But they were also very widely read. Okay,
Mhm, mhm.
so it's very much an enlightenment project. Sorry, I'm a bit lost. What was I answer?
You
I
were
was gonna.
talking about how the seminaries in which the sons of the elite were.
Yes, so like Harvard and all of these places started
Yeah.
out as that,
Hmm.
and then they became enlightenment projects. But
Hmm.
when they became enlightenment projects, instead of becoming a preacher or something like that, you became a lawyer.
Oh yeah.
So what you find is that the American political system is dominated by lawyers, and and as a political system, it is a legalist machine,
Yes.
right? It
Absolutely.
rarely resolves any matters. It is an anti-resolution machine that kind of drives on, and then you get polarization, and then at the point that they are forced to make a decision, they do,
Yes.
right? So, um, one of the things about what happened in the 1970s is that they 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 were unable to imagine a way out. So what happened is that is that they they revived laissez-faire economics under a new name called neoliberalism, right? So it's like don't interfere with the market. The market will sort everything out,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because as we would say in Guyana, because the market have brains, right? In other words, we calling you a jackass. We saying that the market don't have no sense,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
um, and so that the the so that what happens is that the neoliberalism comes back because there is nothing else. But it comes, sorry, no, laissez-faire economics comes back because there is nothing else. But the reality is that what happened is in the United States is that they had built by some measure of central coordination, they had built an economy which then saw in place the Gilded Age, right? So we're talking about the late 19th century,
Mm.
and then led to incredible conglomeration of capital and capitalization because to fulfill their interests, because you're borrowing money for these mega projects now from banks. They say, well, we need to sit on your board. So then they
Mhm.
start to tell them how to run their business,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So it brings the attitude of financialization into the into the American boardroom.
Mhm.
Okay, and so what, and that changes the nature of American business. But they wanted freedom from the kind of strictures that the government placed them under. But when they're in trouble, they want socialization of their of their risk. Okay, and that has always been the laissez-faire problem.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
when neoliberalism was because laissez-faire economics has got a bad name because of because of the Great Depression.
Oh, okay.
They use the name neoliberalism.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
it's really an old idea.
Mhm.
So what we're seeing is, again, the 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 destructive exhaustion of the infrastructural architecture that holds the American Republic together. Um, and increasingly a, an elite that views that architecture in a predatorial manner.
Yes.
It's something to predate upon, and Epstein and his companions just represent that.
Mhm.
Okay, it just tells you the extent of their predation.
Yes.
Okay, and and um and so what we are seeing is that we're beginning to approach um boundaries of instability at which the continued predation upon that load bearing infrastructure
Mhm.
makes the republic more and more unstable,
Mhm.
right? But then the American empire depends upon that republic in order to exist, right? The republic is kind of the sovereign backstop of the market for them. And so what we're so we're looking at, because everybody's looking, so we're just looking at a system that increasingly becomes unstable. One, because of its habit of financialization. Two, because of its habit of the socialization of the predatorial class and the privatization of risk and burden.
Yes. Yes.
Does that make sense? That was a
Yes,
long one. I'm
absolutely.
really sorry
No, no,
for taking you on such a long
no, but it's important that you
exposition.
elaborate all of this. So now we've had basically you planted a couple of pillars, one of them being the legalism of that political system, the
Mm-hmm.
legalism at the heart of that political system, and how
Mm-hmm.
that ties into the financialization and the economic sort of infrastructure
Mm-hmm.
that this system requires in order to perpetuate its power position.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
this is something that if you don't have it in mind at all times, you might mis misconstrue the strategies and the policies coming out of that place over and over again.
Yes. And I think it's very important, because if you're studying politics, politics is about the study of power. It's not a study of ideologies, right? Ideologies are an excuse for the administration of power, right?
Quite
So if you
clear.
study politics, if you're thinking politics, you must think power.
Mm. That's it.
Right?
That is it. It's quite.
And because of the and especially because of the American theological imagination, because what happened is that they 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 became secular, but they merely secularized their theological habits.
Mm,
And so because they became the kind of the central empire of globalism, then they have shaped the political and financial imagination or market imagination
mm,
around this theological grid which underlies their thinking. So you'll find with Americans, um, if if I am saying this, then they will assume that I must be anti-American
mm,
because because it is blasphemy to criticize them.
mm.
Okay, so if so that because and you have to look at political habits.
Yeah.
It, um, when I was traveling in Africa, I would notice that we would sit down and and people are generally very critical of the political. And if you're critical of the political, it does not. I mean, you could be part of a political party, and you still criticize them. Okay,
Yeah.
it's a different attitude to to the political.
Mm,
Okay, so that often what you see as political debate is in the especially in the United States is the performance of they're performing their allegiance.
yeah.
So the discussion is a performance of allegiance, right? It's almost as if there's a perpetual anxiety of some kind of inquisition always present, so that people have to perform their allegiance in public.
That's what we see. That's what we've been witnessing for so many years.
Yes. So I think you cannot think about the American political without considering the the meaning of the persistence of such an artifact, so that in the performance of political discussion, it is always a performance of allegiance. So why is that necessary? What does it
Mm,
mean? What if those things are not enforced by the state, then what underlying anxiety forces such a perpetual performance? Right. So you really have to look at this at the structure of the American political to
mhm,
understand its nature.
mhm,
Okay.
mm.
And unfortunately, a political culture like that is is the perfect shelter for people like Epstein and those kinds of groups of people, right? Because you can't bring into question certain types of things, because to bring into certain question certain types of things
Mhm.
means that you are against. Yeah, you enter the zone of the political heathen.
Yes.
Okay, and it's very easy to place people in that because it is a zone of symbolic death. Okay, so for that is the reason why in my development of a political understanding, I have leaned so heavily upon Jacques Lacan's work, right? Because you have to have means of explaining these very psychic structures that you are seeing in the displayed in especially in the modern political.
Yes. Mm. Very, very interesting. Very interesting. Very deep implications, wide-ranging implications for this.
Mhm.
You know, I tried to do something, as you were speaking earlier, I asked Google, whenever you ask Google anything these days, it gives you an AI response. I asked Google, who are the 100 most influential US politicians between 2010 and 2026? Specify how many of them are lawyers. And then I get a.
Sorry, I'm laughing because I've done it.
Oh, you did that?
Yeah, I'm laughing. Continue, please.
And so here I see all the names of famous politicians: Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, John McCain, and so on and so forth, Lindsey Graham. And suddenly everything you said begins being so clear. You have one financial advisor, one accountant, one businessman, and then you have five lawyers, and then a businessman, and then a rare educator, politician, lawyer, UCLA, University of Connecticut, lawyer, Willamette University, lawyer, University of South Carolina, lawyer, BYU, um, business owner, politician, lawyer, politician, business owner, lawyer, politician, lawyer.
Yep,
So it's business
yep,
and law,
yep.
business and law.
And once you've seen it, you can't unsee it.
You just can't possibly unsee it. The cabinet secretaries, agency heads, and the legal figures. Well,
Mm-hmm.
there's Rex Tillerson is in there. Of course, he's an engineer,
Mm-hmm.
a CEO. There's a military man, James Mattis. Remember him?
Mm-hmm.
My goodness. Well, anyhow, let's leave it alone. But I just want to say that if you go and look it up, you'll find that there's one actor businessman in there among the most influential politicians, and he's a former Austrian, Arnold Schwarzenegger. But most of the most of the people listed in here are, in fact, lawyers. It's
Yep.
impressive. An impressive thing. It's an impressive thing.
Yeah. Okay, I think we just went over 12 o'clock.
And we've been all over the world. We've been all over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we didn't go to Asia much.
No, we didn't actually.
We didn't go to Asia much. I this one has left me thinking. We went a lot into the past
Mm-hmm.
to the point where you filled in lacuna I didn't know I had. Um so the Swedish king under Napoleon was one of Napoleon's generals or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. And he is somehow the founder of that lineage that produces the aristocrat who saves Jews in World War II,
Mm-hmm.
only to be thanked by him being assassinated
Mm-hmm.
by Zionist Jews in Palestine in his effort to bring about a shared solution
Mm-hmm.
for the United Nations. So that was a lot. That one was today's been quite riveting. There's been quite a number of things from the past that we've touched on, and I'm very grateful for this. And I'm also most grateful that we didn't get into the specificities of the Department of Justice dump. Of
Yes, I think the abstain thing is being dealt with by many, many people, and they're doing it effectively.
yeah.
I do not have the stomach to go through that stuff.
But
S- Yeah,
but
and yeah. Hmm.
you've recommended Pasolini indirectly, if just as a reminder of how not new this is. There's
Yes,
nothing new or novel about this.
yeah. In fact, what I will try and do is find a link. No, if you're going to look at Pasolini, you need to find it yourself.
And I
Right?
don't it's quite something. It's quite something.
Yeah, but but really, Pasolini's thoughts, his issues, Pasolini was assassinated.
Well,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, and I think that Pasolini is very important to understanding. Because when we're talking about freedom, and we think of freedom in terms of the kinds of consumer societies that we have, Pasolini is a very staunch critic of that. Um, from the point of view of the ethnic, yeah. So as far as he was concerned, that it was a means of the ethnic cleansing of cultures, because Italy has never been is Italy has always been a patchwork of cultures. Yeah, and what he saw was the destruction of that in the manufacture of some kind of national consumerist imagination. Okay, and so he spoke out against that, and I think it's important. It is as valid for Italy as it is for let's say Nigeria, um, and I wonder if what Pasolini was trying to say is that this produces a social pathology which he explores in 120 Days of Sodom, right? Which is really, sorry for going in. I mean, you have to go back to Gabriel D'Annunzio, who I dealt with very early on Dystopia Unmasked. I can't remember the name of the article, but yes, Gabriel D'Annunzio. Um, he 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 was really the Italian proto fascist, right? Who inspired Mussolini, and whose language you can see, an argument for patterns you can see reflected in Trump's speeches. Um, and Gabriel D'Annunzio, he 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 basically established. He called himself El Duce, right? And he established a well, can't remember. I think they called it a republic. That was really based on that the 120 days of Sodom is based upon. Okay, so these are parts of history that are scarcely spoken about, but they are very important to understand. Was it Bloody Hands of Empire where I looked at it, or was it Rise of the European Ethno-States? Okay, yeah, but it's in one of those early. It's one of the early, perhaps one to third articles that we published. I can't hear you. You're
I'm sorry. I'm saying that for some reason my search of that is a little slow somehow,
Mhm.
but I'll
Oh,
find it.
okay.
I'll find it. Just a second. Oh, oh, because I'm not logged in. It's not allowing me to find stuff. Mm.
Okay. Which one was it?
It's hold on. I've been thrown out because I have to log in. They
Yeah.
say.
So what we'll do is we'll leave it as a link in the article, in
Mm-hmm.
the video when we do it. Um.
Yes.
Okay. All right. I uh, I I think we're at the end. Would you agree? Are there any other? If anybody, I'll take one question from the audience. Um. Yeah. If you want one, and then we can call it quits.
Well, they're building an Arc de Trump, says Anuraga, or India Gate in Washington that is 250 feet high, and he's closing the Kennedy Center.
Yeah. Well,
An Arc de Trump. But I've seen the location. It's quite. It's quite prominent. Not far from the Arlington Center, opposite the Lincoln Building. It's quite Lincoln
Yeah.
Memorial. He's putting himself in a position of historical inevitability.
Um, th- th- that was also a dear friend. What was his name? Son of Marcus Aurelius.
Mm.
Son of Marcus Aurelius. Commodus. That
Commodus,
was
yeah.
Yeah, that was. I always you know that I always compare Trump to Commodus, and that was also, Commodus wanted to go down in history. That is what they want. Um, I I can't see it going well for Trump at all. Um, yeah, if you read the life of Commodus, I think you get Trump.
It's quite something.
Okay, all right. So I don't think we have any. Okay, question.
Huh? It's delusional, an arc of delusion. Yes. Yes.
Yes,
It's yeah, and the size of it is this mirrors the size of the delusion.
yes. I mean, and yeah, it's also a sense of uh, uh, a sense of grandeur. And whenever what's always interesting about when people go for what they do not have, right? So if you see him pushing for a sense of grandeur, which is he has these gold plated places and all of that nonsense. Um, that's what they do not have. Um, the thing about it is that that early taste always begins with a lot, and then late taste ends up in little. So it's always the class the thing about people newly arrived to those kinds of things, that they think that is a lot, right? But as you have it, it becomes overwhelming, and you start to strip it back. So you always see that mature sense mature senses of sensibilities tend to strip back, right? And you see that even sometimes with clothing. Um, yeah, it's maybe dyed red with one flash of gold, and it's enough, right? Yeah. So you see that as you often see that. So he is he is what he is, and he must do what he must do. Okay, all right. Listen, we're done.
It's been a pleasure for me, as always, Dystopia Unmasked. If you find this useful, instructive, if you find that this elevates your state of mind about the state of the world and about the way of the world, we'd appreciate if you invited friends and acquaintances to join Dystopia Unmasked as subscribers. Remember, the subscription is free because the more the merrier, and this is not about making a profit. But if you feel so inclined, we invite you to also subscribe under one of the contributing options. So that's what I would like to close with today. Alex, would you like to?
Well, I mean, I would like to come up. I mean, uh, doing the level of kind of research that one has to do to do this is really a full time job. I support myself in other ways. Can I could do with whatever support people I will have that they can give,
Mm,
and because it's a tough, it's certainly a tough journey. I mean,
mhm.
I've just been talking about the American polity, and that is because I've just spent 4 months immersed in its history. in in
In a part of its history, in a part of its history that is uh very seldomly spoken about. So when it comes out, when you publish that, I think people will be very, very surprised by the things that you find out when you look into that period of the 19th century in particular. It was right.
um, I've been digging from the 1600s to the present. I really took that on, digging from the 1600s to the present.
So
Um,
so the part that you've showed me that I've some familiarity with was quite mind-boggling already. Because whatever you thought you knew about how this polity came about, prepare to be unsettled by the data and the facts and the receipts.
yeah, yeah, it certainly surprised me.
Yes, it is.
It really did surprise me.
Mm.
And again, in this way of doing work, you really can't demonize people. You have to see the contingencies that lead to a situation, and the way that often certain types of decisions are almost made for you. To go against them is, and going against them takes courage, right? And and you see how people become corralled into positions by circumstances, right? And I'm not absolving anybody, but you really have to understand that, because especially anybody who is here, if you ever have to hold any kind of political power at any point of your lives, you you have to expect, or even not even political power, certain types of responsibility, which faces you with decisions, the consequences of which are irreversible, and in which there are often no good options. Okay, so whatever decision you take, you're gonna hold a can of shit,
Mhm.
and and you see that as you study polities. Okay, so often the kind of very richly moral ways of looking at the situation doesn't allow you to understand um, the 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 kinds of constraints and nuts. It's not that there's no need of morality, but the when you're studying history, the person who has to make that decision, they are in the moral space. Okay, the one looking back, what you have to understand, the weight on your shoulders as a historian is to understand how that decision came to be made in a way that is now inevitable, because it wasn't inevitable before,
Mhm.
right? So that is really important in terms of historical method, um, and because of that very European theological approach to history, and to politics, we end up with history and political analysis, which is the performance of moral allegiance, and it doesn't, and it does it it has not helped us. All right,
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Alex, and talk to you next week.
I look forward to it. You take care.